I wasn't sure if I was going to include sharing our success in this reading response, because I think my answer might kind of go against what others think, but I decided to include it anyway because my perspective is important, right? So here goes. I chose to read a couple of case studies because I wanted to do a compare and contrast. So to keep track of that, I made a chart that was just for me, easy for me to keep track of. So that's what I've included below the video here. So if you click on the pictures, they'll get bigger and you can kind of check it out. The two schools I looked at, I compared and contrasted, were the Chalo and Alert Bay schools. I'm not sure if that's how you say it properly, but Chalo. Anyway, all right, here goes. So I guess you could say these schools are success stories, but in my opinion, it depends on what you consider success. If you look at their scores on the standardized tests, I suppose you could say they are successful. But in my opinion, they are failing when you look at their language and cultural instruction. What I noticed was that students receive very little instruction in their native languages. For example, the Chalo kindergarten students receive only 60 minutes per week. Per week! At Alert Bay, they receive instruction twice a week, but I wasn't able to find how many minutes. And French is also offered. Both schools stated that parents thought the balance was good, and at some point, home and parents need to take responsibility for teaching the students about language and culture. I agree with this, but I do have to question what happens when you have someone like me who doesn't know their language and culture for that matter. How am I supposed to teach my child something I don't know about? I'm pretty sure these students at these two schools, Chalo and Alert Bay, will be successful at high school and probably go on to get good jobs, just like I did. I question if there'll come a point in their lives when they feel lost, like I do. Maybe I am grasping at straws, but I think I'm thinking about my own experiences growing up and going to school, learning Ganyageha 3 to 4 times a week for 30 minutes. At that time, I'm sure the powers that be thought getting language instruction 3 to 4 times a week for 30 minutes was enough time, but for me, it wasn't. My parents never went to traditional ceremonies for whatever reason, and they could not teach me at home. I don't want that for my son. If there are teachers out there who are knowledgeable of Ganyageha, then I want them to teach that to my son. I want them to teach him the language and the ceremonies because I don't know them yet. So, what are some of the struggles of the Aboriginal education initiatives? The glaringly obvious issues with band operated schools is funding. Chalo is lucky enough to have the resources to top up the funding, so they are on par with the province. Not all reserves are lucky enough to be able to do this, and it's the students who end up suffering. The argument of language and literacy is also an issue. And when I'm talking about language, I'm talking about language arts, not an indigenous language. So yes, we all need to be able to read and write in order to thrive in the dominant culture. I'm a perfect example of this. I grew up and went to school on my reserve all of my life until I had to leave the reserve to go to high school. I did well in school. It was easy for me. I was motivated by my mom. She told me that I needed to learn to read and write so I could make a good living for myself, and she was absolutely right. But at this point in my life, I feel lost. Sure, I have a great job. I love teaching. I love being around kids all day because you just never know what you're going to get. But I truly feel like I have no idea who I am because I cannot speak the language and therefore I do not know my culture. I wonder at what point in their lives of the students who attend Chalo and Alert Bay are they going to discover this for themselves? Is it when they go to high school? Maybe it will be in their 20s or 30s, 40s or 50s. Another struggle that was talked about in the sharing our successes was the issue of supply teachers. It's kind of good to know that my school isn't the only school that suffers from this. Obviously, in remote areas like Chalo or Alert Bay, it's going to be difficult to get a supply teacher to move there to be a supply teacher. At my school, we have an extremely difficult time getting supply teachers, and we're not even isolated. So for those band operated schools in remote areas, it would be even more difficult for obvious reasons. Many Indigenous students experience difficulties when they leave their cozy, comfortable schools and transition to high school. Both Chalo and Alert Bay have developed alternate programs that allow students to be successful beyond what their school has to offer. So they've integrated classes for above the grades, for kids to stay there and attend and be successful. Okay, so some of the positives. Probably the most positive thing and the common denominator in the readings was the involvement of the parents and community in the success of these schools. This was a common denominator, like I said, through all of the readings in both the Alert Bay and the Chalo reading case studies, but also in the Just Do It article as well. Nicole Bell made reference to how awesome the parents were at the schools and volunteering their time because they had to be. So that leads to the next point. Parents, teachers, all staff have to go above and beyond in order for the schools to operate and run so smoothly. At Chalo School, it was indicated the principal was the reason for many of the successes there. The principal has made the school a safe haven for students. Students are allowed inside the school at 7:30 a.m. and are welcome to go anywhere as long as they are respectful of the space. So the whole idea of respect is another positive. The attitudes of the students at both schools is one of respect. They respect their school, each other, and all staff. This respect is a result of open communication. Because staff have to go above and beyond, they have very open relationship with parents. Parents know what is going on at all times with their children at the schools and are more than welcome to come in during the day. So, all of that being said, maybe these schools are success stories to some extent. But in my opinion, my humble opinion, there's always room for improvement. For me, that improvement would be in increased exposure to the language and culture.